Before delivery, when I was admitted to the hospital, my mom stormed into my room, shouting in rage, "Hand over the $25,000 delivery fund right now. Your sister needs it more." When I refused, saying, "This is for my baby's medical care," she clenched both fists and struck my 9 months pregnant belly with all her strength. My water broke instantly and I screamed in pain, collapsing on the hospital bed. Dad, who was with her, added, "That's what you get for being selfish." My sister texted from outside, "Tell her to hurry up and pay." My brother called, "Just take the money and leave." But then, with a loud bang, the door flew open, and my mother froze in terror, because standing there was... I never wanted to believe my family hated me. Even after everything they put me through, I held on to hope that somewhere beneath their cruelty was actual love. That hope died on March 15th, 2024, in room 418 of Cedar Valley Medical Center. The pregnancy hadn't been easy. My husband Jason died in a construction accident when I was 5 months along, leaving me alone with mounting medical bills and a high-risk pregnancy. The baby had a heart condition that required specialist care. Every penny I earned from my job as a paralegal went towards saving for the delivery and the immediate postnatal care my daughter would need. Jason's death had been sudden and devastating. One moment, he was kissing me goodbye before heading to the construction site in downtown Portland. And 12 hours later, 2 police officers were at my door with expressions that told me everything before they spoke a word. A scaffold collapse. 3 workers killed instantly. My husband, the father of my unborn child, gone in seconds. His life insurance policy had lapsed 2 months earlier. He'd forgotten to pay it during a particularly busy work period, and neither of us had noticed until after his death, when I desperately needed those funds. The construction company offered a settlement of $40,000, which their lawyers made clear was generous, given that Jason had signed extensive liability waivers. I took it because I had no choice, no energy to fight, and a baby growing inside me who needed stability. That money went toward paying off Jason's truck, settling his credit card debt, covering the funeral expenses, and catching up on rent I'd fallen behind on during my grief-induced inability to work for 6 weeks. By the time everything was settled, I had $8,000 left, not nearly enough for what was coming. The heart condition was discovered during my 20-week anatomy scan. The technician had gone quiet, her wand hovering over the same spot for too long. She'd excused herself and returned with Dr. Morrison, who studied the screen with a furrowed brow before gently explaining that my daughter had a ventricular septal defect with additional complications. She'd need specialized monitoring, delivery at a hospital equipped with a high-level NICU, and quite possibly surgery within days of being born. My insurance through the law firm was decent, but not exceptional. They'd cover a portion of the hospital stay, a portion of the surgery, a portion of the specialist care. The portions they wouldn't cover added up to somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000, depending on complications. Dr. Morrison had been frank. I needed to prepare financially for the worst-case scenario, so I'd built my life around saving. The law firm had been understanding about Jason's death, giving me bereavement leave, and even a small raise when I returned. I worked overtime whenever possible, taking on extra research projects and document reviews that paid hourly. I cut every possible expense from my budget, switching to the cheapest phone plan, canceling streaming services, buying only generic brands at the grocery store. My apartment became sparse as I sold anything with value. The nice coffee table Jason had built went for $300. His gaming console and collection of games brought in $800. My jewelry, most of it gifts from Jason over the years, was liquidated piece by piece. Wedding band, engagement ring, the pearl necklace he'd given me on our first anniversary. Each sale felt like cutting away another piece of my old life. But my daughter's future mattered more than sentiment. I ate rice and beans most nights, oatmeal for breakfast, peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. When my coworkers ordered takeout, I declined and ate the cheap meal I packed. When they invited me to happy hour, I made excuses. The paralegal salary that had felt comfortable when Jason and I were both working now had to stretch to cover everything alone, and I stretched it to the breaking point. By my 8th month, I'd managed to save $23,000. The final push came from my tax refund and selling Jason's tool collection to one of his former co-workers. 25,347. I remember the exact amount because I checked my savings account balance obsessively, terrified that somehow the money would disappear. I'd skipped meals to save money, worn the same 3 maternity outfits for months, canceled my internet, and sold my furniture piece by piece. By my 9th month, I had exactly 25,347 in a separate savings account. My obstetrician had been clear. With the baby's condition, I needed to deliver at a hospital with a level 4 NICU, and my insurance wouldn't cover everything. That money was survival. My family knew about the fund. I'd mentioned it once at a Sunday dinner 3 months earlier, explaining why I couldn't help my sister Taylor with her wedding expenses. My mother had gone silent, her fork hovering midair. My father had grunted into his mashed potatoes. My brother Kevin had laughed and said I was being dramatic about a little heart murmur. I should have seen the warning signs in that silence. My family had never been subtle about their favoritism toward Taylor, but after Jason died, their lack of support became glaring. My mother had come to the funeral but left early, citing a headache. My father had shaken my hand awkwardly and told me Jason should have been more careful. Kevin hadn't come at all, texting that he had a fishing trip planned and couldn't cancel. Taylor had attended but spent most of the service on her phone texting with Brett about wedding venues. I'd overheard her telling our cousin that she hoped I'd get life insurance money because she really needed help with a catering deposit at my husband's funeral, while I stood 3 feet away, visibly pregnant and shaking with grief. I tried to talk to my mother about it later, calling her a week after the service to say I felt hurt by the family's response. She'd sighed dramatically and said, "Well, what did you expect us to do? Sit around crying all day? Life goes on, sweetheart. Jason wouldn't want you to wallow." I wasn't wallowing. I was grieving. There's a difference. But my mother had never been good at distinguishing between emotions that inconvenienced her and emotions that were valid. The Sunday dinner where I'd mentioned the medical fund had been my last attempt at maintaining family connection. Taylor had just announced that Brett's parents were backing out of funding the reception venue, a fancy country club that cost $28,000 for the space alone. She'd been in tears, mascara running down her face, while my mother patted her hand and assured her they'd find a solution. "Maybe you could have the reception at a less expensive venue," I'd suggested gently. "There are beautiful locations that cost a fraction of that." Taylor had looked at me like I'd suggested she get married in a dumpster. "This is my dream wedding. I've been planning this for 2 years. I'm not downgrading because Brett's parents are being cheap. I'm just saying there are options that wouldn't require such a huge amount of money." My mother had cut in then, her voice sharp. "Taylor deserves a beautiful wedding. She's only getting married once." The implication stung. I'd gotten married at the courthouse because Jason and I wanted to save money for a house. My mother had made her disappointment clear, refusing to attend and sending a card with a $50 check inside. Now, apparently, my practical wedding meant I couldn't comment on Taylor's extravagant one. "I'm not saying she doesn't deserve a nice wedding," I'd said carefully. "I'm just offering perspective about alternatives." Kevin had jumped in then. "Why don't you help her out? You're working. You don't have any expenses now that Jason's gone. You could spare some money for your sister's big day." The casualness with which he'd referenced my husband's death, as though it were a convenient financial development rather than a devastating loss, had left me momentarily speechless. "I have plenty of expenses," I'd finally said. "The baby has health issues. I'm saving every dollar for her medical care." Taylor had perked up. "How much have you saved?" I should have lied. Should have said a few thousand. Nothing significant. Instead, still naive enough to think honesty mattered with family, I told the truth. "About $25,000 so far. It's all earmarked for the hospital and the NICU." The silence that followed was heavy and strange. My mother's fork had stopped moving. My father had looked up from his plate for the first time all meal. Kevin had exchanged a glance with Taylor that I couldn't interpret. 25,000, Taylor had repeated slowly. "That's almost exactly what I need for the venue." It's for my baby's heart surgery, I'd said firmly. It's not available for anything else. My mother had set her fork down carefully. Surely the hospital has payment plans. They can't refuse to treat a baby because you don't pay up front. They have payment plans with interest rates that would bury me in debt for years. I'm trying to avoid that. Family should help family, my father had said, his first contribution to the conversation. Your sister needs help now. Your baby won't even be born for months. 3 months, I corrected, and the surgery might happen within days of delivery. I need that money accessible and ready. Taylor's wedding was scheduled for June. She'd been planning it for 2 years, and apparently her fiancé Brett's family had backed out of paying for the reception venue. She needed $25,000 exactly. The coincidence should have warned me. I was admitted to the hospital on March 14th for early labor symptoms. The contractions were irregular, but Dr. Morrison wanted me monitored, given the baby's condition. I was resting, trying to sleep despite the anxiety, when my phone started buzzing at 11 p.m. The weeks after that dinner had been increasingly hostile. Taylor had started a group text with the family, pointedly excluding me, where she apparently complained about how selfish I was being. I only knew about it because Kevin accidentally sent me a screenshot meant for someone else, showing messages about how I'd always been difficult and didn't understand what real family meant. My mother had shown up at my apartment twice. The first time she tried sweetness, bringing a casserole and sitting on my worn couch while explaining how much Taylor's happiness meant to her. You know how sensitive your sister is, she'd said. This wedding is everything to her. Can't you find it in your heart to help? I'd explained again about the medical expenses, about the high-risk pregnancy, about needing every dollar for my daughter's care. My mother's expression had soured. You always put yourself first, she'd said, standing abruptly. Even when you were little, you were selfish. Taylor shares. Taylor thinks of others. Taylor, who'd borrowed $2,000 from me 4 years ago for a business opportunity and never paid it back. Taylor, who'd used my car for 6 months when hers broke down and returned it with a cracked windshield and an empty gas tank. Taylor, who thought of others when it benefited her. The second visit had been less pleasant. My mother had arrived unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key I'd foolishly given her years ago. I'd been 8 months pregnant, exhausted from work, lying on the couch trying to ease the swelling in my ankles. We need to discuss your obligations, she'd announced, standing over me. I don't have any obligations to fund Taylor's wedding. She's your sister. Family has obligations to each other. Then where was the family when Jason died? Where were the casseroles and the support and the offers to help? I was alone, pregnant and drowning in grief and bills. Nobody offered me $25,000. My mother's face had flushed red. That was different. You're an adult. You handle your own problems. And Taylor is also an adult who should handle her own problems. What she'd said next had chilled me to the bone. If you don't give Taylor the money, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll tell Child Protective Services you're an unfit mother. I'll tell them about your depression after Jason died, about how you can barely take care of yourself. They'll take that baby the moment she's born. I'd struggled to sit up, my heart pounding. You wouldn't. Try me. Give Taylor the money or I'll make your life hell. And trust me, sweetheart, you don't want me as an enemy. She'd left after that, taking the spare key with her, which I'd been too shocked to ask for back. I'd sat on that couch for an hour, shaking, before finally calling the number on the business card I'd received weeks earlier. Graham Walsh was a family law attorney who'd done some work for the firm where I worked. We'd chatted a few times in the break room when he'd come for meetings with the partners. He'd heard about Jason's death through office gossip and had stopped by my desk one day to offer condolences in his card. If you ever need legal help, especially with family matters or estate issues, call me, he'd said kindly. I know how complicated things can get when people are grieving. I'd tucked the card in my wallet, not thinking I'd ever need it. But after my mother's threat, I'd called him that same evening. Graham had listened to everything. The wedding fund demand, my mother's threats, the family pressure. Then he'd asked a question that surprised me. "Do you have any of this in writing or recorded?" I pulled up the text messages from Taylor and Kevin, the voicemails from my father calling me selfish, but I hadn't recorded my mother's threat. "Here's what I want you to do," Graham said. "Document everything going forward. If your mother contacts you again, record it. Oregon is a one-party consent state, so you can legally record conversations you're part of without telling the other person. Keep a detailed journal of every interaction, and let me know immediately if anyone threatens you or the baby." I'd started documenting everything, the texts, the calls, the surprise visits. I'd installed a camera doorbell at my apartment and set my phone to automatically record all calls from family members. 2 weeks before I was admitted to the hospital, my mother had called and I caught every word. "I'm giving you one last chance," she'd said. "Transfer the money to Taylor's account or there will be consequences." What kind of consequences? The kind that involve courts and custody battles and proving you're an unfit parent. Do you really think you can handle a special needs baby alone? You can barely handle yourself. I'm handling everything just fine. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a disaster. Depressed widow, high-risk pregnancy, living in a cramped apartment on a paralegal salary. Any judge would question your ability to care for that child. You're threatening to try to take my baby because I won't fund Taylor's wedding. I'm trying to help you see reason. Family takes care of family. You give Taylor what she needs, and I'll make sure that baby grows up in a stable environment. You refuse, and I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are. I'd ended the call and immediately sent the recording to Graham. His response had been swift. "This is extortion. We need to prepare for the possibility that she'll escalate. When is your due date?" 4 weeks. But the doctor says it could be at any time with the stress and complications. When you go into labor, let me know immediately. I'm going to contact a colleague at the DA's office. This kind of threat against a pregnant woman might interest them. He'd also suggested cameras in the hospital room. If your mother is willing to threaten you over the phone, she might be willing to do worse in person. Let's make sure if she does. We have evidence. I'd agreed, though part of me still couldn't believe my own mother would actually hurt me. Threaten me, yes. Bully me, absolutely. But physical violence seemed beyond even her cruelty. I'd been wrong. "Taylor, we need to talk about the money." I ignored it. She called twice. I sent her to voicemail. Kevin called next. "Pick up. This is important." I turned my phone off and finally dozed around midnight, exhausted from the emotional strain and physical discomfort. The next morning, I woke to find 12 missed calls and 37 text messages, all from family, all about the money. "Taylor, Mom says you have an obligation to help family." "Kevin, don't be selfish. Jason would be ashamed." My mother had sent a single message. "Room 418, correct? We're coming to discuss this properly." My blood went cold. I texted back immediately. "Don't come here." "I'm in the hospital. The baby needs this money." Her response came instantly. "We'll be there at 2 p.m. I called the nurse's station asking them to restrict visitors to my room. The nurse, a kind woman named Petra, said she'd make a note, but couldn't legally prevent family members unless I had a restraining order. I didn't. The next call I made was to Graham Walsh. He answered on the second ring, and I could hear traffic in the background. "They're coming to the hospital," I said, my voice shaking. "My mother just texted that they'll be here at 2. "What's your room number?" 418, 4th floor, Cedar Valley Medical Center. "I'm calling Detective Brennan right now. We talked about your case last week, and she's been very interested. Give me 20 minutes to coordinate." "What if they get here before you do?" "Stall them. Don't give them any information. If they threaten you, document it. If they touch you or try to physically coerce you, press your call button immediately. I'll be there as fast as I can." After we hung up, I tried to calm myself down. The stress was making the contractions worse, the monitors beeping with my elevated heart rate. Petra came in to check on me, concerned by the readings. "Is everything all right?" she asked gently. "My family is coming, and I don't want them here. They've been threatening me about money." Petra's expression shifted to something harder. "Threatening you how?" I showed her some of the texts. Her mouth thinned into a line. "I'll alert security to keep an eye on your floor," she said, "and I'll be checking on you more frequently. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, you hit that call button, understand?" I nodded, grateful for her protectiveness, even though I knew hospital security couldn't actually stop my family from visiting. The minutes crawled by. 1:30 p.m. 1:45 p.m. At 1:52, Graham texted, "In the parking lot. Detective Brennan is with me. We're setting up cameras in your room now. Nurses have been informed." When your family arrives, act natural. Don't let them know we're here. At 1:55, a hospital maintenance worker I'd never seen before came in with a small ladder claiming he needed to check the smoke detector. He was done in 3 minutes, leaving with a polite nod. I noticed the tiny camera now mounted near the ceiling, its lens barely visible. 2 more cameras were installed under the guise of adjusting the TV mount and checking an electrical outlet. To anyone not looking for them, they'd be invisible. At 2:03 p.m., I heard my mother's voice in the hallway, sharp and demanding. "Room 418, where is it?" Petra's calm response. "Down the hall to your left." My heart hammered against my ribs. I positioned myself in the bed, trying to look calm despite the terror coursing through me. My hand went to my belly protectively, feeling my daughter moving inside. At 2:06 p.m., my door burst open. My mother walked in first, wearing her church blazer-like armor. My father followed, silent as always, his presence meant to intimidate rather than mediate. Behind them, I could see Taylor in the hallway, pacing with her phone. "We need that money," my mother announced without preamble. No greeting, no concern for how I was feeling or whether the baby was okay. I was connected to monitors, an IV drip in my arm, wearing a hospital gown, and feeling more vulnerable than I'd ever felt. My hand instinctively moved to my belly. "It's for my baby's medical care," I said, keeping my voice steady. I already told Taylor no. My mother's face twisted. "Your sister's wedding is more important than your expensive medical drama. You've always been selfish, putting yourself first." "My daughter has a heart condition. She might need surgery immediately after birth. This isn't drama. It's her life." My father spoke then, his voice low and cold. "Family helps family. Taylor needs this wedding. You can always make more money." "Not before my baby is born," I shot back. "Not before she needs care that could save her life." My mother stepped closer to the bed. "Hand over the account information right now. We're not leaving until you do." "No." The word came out stronger than I felt. "Get out of my room before I call security." She reached for my purse on the bedside table. I grabbed it first, clutching it against my chest. The movement made the monitors beep, my heart rate spiking. "You ungrateful little brat," my mother hissed. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Your sister's happiness means nothing to you. My baby's life means everything to me." What happened next occurred in seconds, though my mind recorded it in agonizing slow motion. My mother's face contorted with rage. She clenched both fists, raised them high, and brought them down with full force onto my pregnant belly. The pain was instant and catastrophic. Something inside me gave way, a sensation of tearing and flooding. I screamed, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. Warm liquid soaked through my gown and onto the sheets. The monitors erupted in urgent beeping. "That's what you get for being selfish," my father added, his voice almost pleased. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pain radiated through my entire body. My hands went to my belly, feeling the wetness, the wrongness. My phone, which had fallen onto the bed, started buzzing. Taylor's text flashed on the screen. "Tell her to hurry up and pay." Kevin called immediately after, and my father actually answered it, putting it on speaker. "Just take the money and leave." Kevin's voice filled the room. "She's being ridiculous about this." I was crying, gasping, trying to reach for the call button. My mother stood over me, not a shred of remorse on her face. "Now, will you transfer the money?" she demanded. Before I could answer, before I could press the call button, before I could do anything except exist in my terror and pain, The door to my room flew open with a bang so loud it made everyone jump. My mother froze, the color draining from her face. Standing in the doorway was Detective Sarah Brennan from the district attorney's office, flanked by two uniformed police officers. Behind them stood my attorney, Graham Walsh, holding his phone up and recording. "Step away from the patient immediately," Detective Brennan commanded, her hand resting on her service weapon. My mother stumbled backward, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. My father went rigid. "What is this?" my mother managed to stammer. Graham stepped forward, his phone still recording. "This is the consequence of assaulting a pregnant woman and attempting to extort her for $25,000, both of which are felonies." I hadn't called them. I hadn't called anyone. I was too shocked to understand what was happening. Detective Brennan moved to my bedside, her expression softening when she looked at me. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" "My water broke," I gasped. "She hit me. The baby." The detective immediately hit the call button while one of the officers spoke into his radio, calling for medical staff. Within seconds, Dr. Morrison rushed in with two nurses, taking in the scene with sharp, professional eyes. "Everyone out except medical personnel," Dr. Morrison ordered. "Now." "These two aren't going anywhere," Detective Brennan said, gesturing to my parents. "Officer Mills, Officer Patterson, please detain these individuals." My mother's voice rose to a shriek. "You can't arrest us. She's our daughter. This is a family matter." "You just assaulted a pregnant woman in front of witnesses," Graham said calmly, still recording. "And I have the entire incident on video from multiple angles." That's when I saw them. 3 small cameras positioned around my room, their tiny red lights blinking. Cameras I hadn't noticed before. My father finally found his voice. "This is entrapment." "This is documentation," Graham corrected. "Your daughter contacted me weeks ago, concerned that her family might attempt to coerce or threaten her into surrendering funds designated for her child's medical care. She requested I take preventative legal measures. When she informed me you were coming to the hospital despite her explicitly telling you not to, I contacted Detective Brennan, who has been investigating financial exploitation of vulnerable individuals. We arrived just in time to witness you commit aggravated assault." The nurses were checking my vitals, preparing to move me. Dr. Morrison looked at Detective Brennan. "She needs to go to labor and delivery immediately. The baby's in distress." "Go," the detective said to me. "We have everything we need here." As they wheeled my bed out, I saw my mother being handcuffed, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. My father was being read his rights, his silence finally broken by stammered protests. In the hallway, Taylor stood with her phone to her ear, her eyes wide with shock. When she saw me, she opened her mouth to speak, but Kevin's voice came from her phone, still on the line. "What do you mean they're being arrested?" Officer Patterson took Taylor's phone. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come to the Cedar Valley Police Department for questioning regarding conspiracy to commit extortion." Taylor's face went white. "I didn't do anything. I just asked for help with my wedding." "You just texted tell her to hurry up and pay, while your mother was physically assaulting a pregnant woman," Graham informed her, showing his phone screen. "That's conspiracy." They wheeled me into the delivery room. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it was something else. A fierce, burning satisfaction. I hadn't called Graham 2 days ago. I'd called him 3 weeks ago after my mother had shown up at my apartment and threatened to take my baby away the moment she was born, claiming I was unfit to be a parent. She'd said if I gave Taylor the money, she'd drop it. If not, she'd make my life hell. I'd recorded that conversation too, given it to Graham, asked him what I could do to protect myself and my daughter. He'd suggested the cameras, the monitoring, the coordination with law enforcement. "People who threaten pregnant women often escalate," he'd said. "Let's make sure if they do, we have everything documented." I hadn't wanted to believe my own mother would actually hurt me. Some part of me thought she'd just yell, make threats, eventually leave. I hadn't imagined she'd actually strike my pregnant belly. The delivery room was chaos. Dr. Morrison was calling out instructions. Nurses were setting up equipment, and an anesthesiologist was explaining the emergency C-section procedure, while I signed consent forms with shaking hands. The pain from where my mother had struck me radiated through my entire abdomen, competing with the contractions that were now coming hard and fast. "We need to get the baby out now," Dr. Morrison said, her voice calm but urgent. "Her heart rate is dropping. Are you ready?" I wasn't ready. How could anyone be ready for this? My baby was coming 5 weeks early because my own mother had attacked me. Jason should have been here, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. Instead, I was alone, terrified, and about to undergo surgery while my family was being arrested 1 floor below. The anesthesia worked quickly. I felt the pressure of the incision, but no pain. Heard the mechanical sounds of the surgery, smelled the antiseptic air. Dr. Morrison talked me through each step, her voice a lifeline in the surreal nightmare. "Almost there," she said. "I can see her head. She's tiny, but she's fighting. That's a good sign." Then, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I heard it. A weak, keening cry. Not the robust wail I'd heard in movies, but a sound nonetheless. My daughter, alive, breathing, fighting. "She's out," Dr. Morrison announced. 4 pounds, 11 ounces. NICU team, she's all yours. I caught only a glimpse, a tiny, red, wrinkled creature, all limbs and fury, before the neonatal team whisked her away to their specialized equipment. I wanted to hold her, to tell her I loved her, to apologize for the violence that had precipitated her early arrival. Instead, I could only watch as they worked on her across the room, their movements efficient and practiced. "Is she okay?" I asked, my voice shaking. "She's breathing on her own, which is excellent," one of the NICU nurses said, "but we need to get her stabilized and assess the heart condition. Dr. Morrison will close you up, and then we'll give you a full update." They left with my daughter, and suddenly the delivery room felt empty despite being full of people. Dr. Morrison continued working, stitching me back together while murmuring reassurances. A nurse held my hand, squeezing gently when I started to cry. "You did great," she said softly. "Your baby girl is a fighter, just like her mom." Was I a fighter? I'd let my family bully me for years, let them belittle my marriage, dismiss my grief, demand my money. The only reason I protected myself this time was because Graham had insisted on the cameras, because Detective Brennan had been willing to get involved. I hadn't fought. I'd just been lucky enough to have help. But maybe that was fighting too. Maybe recognizing when you needed help and accepting it was its own form of strength. Maybe protecting your child meant being smart enough to set traps for the people who meant you harm. Graham appeared in the recovery room an hour later. I was groggy from the medication, stitched up and sore, but awake enough to understand what he was telling me. "Your mother and father have been arrested and taken to the county jail," he said, pulling a chair close to my bed. "Taylor and Kevin are being brought in for questioning. The DA is reviewing the recordings and is very interested in prosecuting. What happens now? Now you focus on recovering and on your daughter. The legal system will handle your family. But I need to ask, do you want to proceed with this? Once charges are filed, there's no going back. Your family will know you set them up." Set them up. The words felt harsh but accurate. I had set them up. I'd known they were coming, known what they wanted, and I'd prepared cameras and law enforcement to catch them in the act. "They tried to steal money meant for my baby's surgery," I said. "My mother hit me hard enough to break my water. My father stood there and said I deserved it. Taylor and Kevin encouraged it from a distance, safe from consequences. Yes, I want to proceed." Graham nodded. "Then we proceed. I'm also recommending you file for a restraining order against all 4 of them. It'll prevent them from contacting you or coming near you or the baby. Do it." He spent another 20 minutes going over the details, the charges being considered, the timeline for arraignment and trial. I listened with half my attention, the other half focused on the NICU 2 floors above, where my daughter was fighting for her life without me there to hold her. After Graham left, Petra came in with an update. "Your daughter is stable. She's on oxygen support but breathing mostly on her own. The cardiologist will examine her in the morning to determine if surgery is needed immediately or if it can wait until she's stronger. Can I see her? Not tonight. You need to rest and let the anesthesia wear off completely. But first thing tomorrow morning, we'll take you up in a wheelchair. That night was the longest of my life. I lay in the hospital bed, my body aching from surgery, my mind racing with everything that had happened. My phone buzzed periodically with texts from numbers I didn't recognize, probably family members who'd heard about the arrests and wanted to plead or threaten or manipulate. I blocked each number without reading the messages. Around midnight, a text came through from an unknown number that I almost blocked automatically, but something made me open it. "This is Brett. Taylor's crying and saying this is all a misunderstanding. She says you trapped them." I don't know what to believe, but I do know that what I saw on the news tonight looked pretty clear. "Your mom hit a pregnant woman. That was you. I'm calling off the wedding. I can't marry into a family capable of that. I'm sorry for whatever part Taylor played in this." I read it 3 times, feeling a complicated mix of satisfaction and sadness. Taylor's dream wedding was canceled. The thing she'd been willing to let my mother assault me over was gone. But Brett seemed like a decent guy who was now dealing with the fallout of his fiancée's choices. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. My daughter Mira was born 47 minutes after my mother hit me via emergency C-section. She weighed 4 pounds, 11 ounces, and her heart condition required immediate surgery. The $25,000 covered what insurance wouldn't, along with 3 weeks in the NICU. My mother and father were each charged with aggravated assault, attempted extortion, and conspiracy. Taylor and Kevin were charged with conspiracy to commit extortion. My mother took a plea deal and served 18 months in prison. My father served 14 months. Taylor got probation and a felony record that destroyed her wedding plans, since Brett's family wanted nothing to do with the scandal. Kevin served 8 months. But that wasn't the revenge that mattered. While they were awaiting trial, I filed a civil lawsuit for emotional distress, assault, and medical complications. Graham helped me compile evidence, years of text messages showing financial manipulation, recorded phone calls where they demanded money, emails detailing their threats. The cameras in the hospital room had caught everything, including my mother's gleeful expression before she struck me and my father's pleased comment afterward. The civil trial was brutal. My mother cried on the stand, claiming she'd just been trying to help Taylor and that I'd always been a difficult, selfish child. My father sat stone-faced, offering no defense. Taylor testified that she'd only wanted help with her wedding and hadn't known what Mom was planning. Kevin claimed he'd been joking in his texts. The jury didn't buy it. They awarded me $340,000 in damages. My parents had to sell their house to pay it. Taylor's wedding fund, what little existed, went toward legal fees. Kevin lost his truck and his boat. I used the money to set up a trust fund for Mira's ongoing medical care and future education. Every cent of what they tried to steal, multiplied by their cruelty, now belonged to the granddaughter my mother had assaulted in the womb. Mira is 14 months old now. Her heart surgery was successful. She's hitting all her developmental milestones. She'll never remember the day she was born, the violence that precipitated her early arrival, the grandmother who valued a wedding venue more than her life. But I'll remember. Every time I look at my daughter, healthy and smiling, I remember what my family tried to take from us. My mother sent a letter from prison 6 months into her sentence. It was full of apologies and excuses, claiming she'd been under stress, that she hadn't meant to hurt me, that family should forgive family. She asked if I'd bring Mira to visit. I sent the letter to Graham, who added it to our file in case she attempted to pursue grandparents' rights after her release. Then I blocked her prison account from contacting me again. Taylor reached out through a mutual acquaintance asking if we could reconcile. She'd lost friends, lost her fiancé, lost her reputation. She wanted to explain that she'd never meant for things to go so far. I didn't respond. Intent doesn't negate impact. She'd texted, "Tell her to hurry up and pay." while I was screaming in pain, my water broken, my baby in distress. Whether she'd meant for it to go that far was irrelevant. She'd participated. She'd encouraged. She'd prioritized a party over her niece's life. Kevin tried calling from different numbers for months. I blocked each one. Eventually, he stopped trying. My father's sister reached out, suggesting that perhaps I was being too harsh. That family was supposed to forgive. I asked her if she'd forgive someone who punched a pregnant woman in the stomach. She stopped calling. The thing about revenge is that people expect it to feel satisfying in a clean, simple way, like justice delivered with a neat bow. But real revenge is complicated. It's watching your mother cry in a courtroom while feeling nothing but cold determination. It's hearing your sister lost everything and feeling only a vague sense of appropriate consequence. It's knowing your father sold the house he loved and thinking only that it's not enough, will never be enough, to compensate for what he enabled. What feels good isn't the revenge itself. What feels good is the safety. Mira will grow up never knowing people who would hurt her for money. She'll never spend holidays with grandparents who see her as less important than a wedding venue. She'll never have an aunt who would text callously while her mother screamed in pain. She'll never have an uncle who thinks theft is justified if it's for family. She'll grow up with the knowledge that her mother protected her, even when it meant destroying every family relationship I'd ever known. People ask if I regret it, if I wish things had gone differently, if I miss my family. I regret that I was ever naive enough to think they loved me. I wish I'd cut them off years earlier, before I was vulnerable and pregnant and alone. And I don't miss them at all. What I have instead is a daughter who will never doubt she's worth protecting, a daughter who will never wonder if she's less important than someone else's desires, a daughter who will know, bone deep, that the people who truly love you don't hit you when you're at your most vulnerable. That's worth more than any family who shared my blood, but never my values. Detective Brennan still checks in every few months. She tells me my case helped prosecute 2 other instances of family financial exploitation she'd been investigating. Apparently, my mother had a history of pressuring relatives for money, though I'd never known the extent of it. Other cousins, other siblings, other people, too ashamed or too scared to speak up. Graham framed the newspaper article about the case and sent it to me. Woman defends unborn child's medical fund, leads to felony convictions, read the headline. I keep it in a drawer, not displayed, but available. Someday, when Mira is old enough to understand, I'll show it to her. I'll tell her about the day she was born, but not the violence. I'll tell her about the people who tried to hurt us, but not the details. I'll tell her that sometimes protecting the people you love means standing alone against everyone else. And I'll tell her that she was worth it. Every consequence, every burned bridge, every relationship destroyed. She was worth all of it and more. The door that flew open that day brought police, lawyers, and justice. But more than that, it brought a line in the sand. A moment where I stopped being the family's doormat and became my daughter's defender. My mother froze in terror when she saw Detective Brennan, but I felt only relief. Relief that I'd been smart enough to prepare. Relief that I trusted my instincts. Relief that my daughter would be born into a world where someone was willing to fight for her, even against family, even against tradition, even against the people who were supposed to love us most. That's the real ending to this story. Not revenge, but protection. Not punishment, but prevention. Not justice for what happened, but safety for what will never happen again. Mira will never know a family who values money over her life. And for that, I'd make the same choices 1,000 times.